The biggest trend we're seeing is we've been thinking about on-premise wrong. On-premise is back, but it's not coming back the way it used to be. So just think in the last 20 years, maybe even more in the last 15, it's been all about SaaS. And that's a great thing. And enterprises have been just flooding, moving towards that. But now we're seeing a lot of other dynamics come into play. People are now thinking about privacy.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. One of your hosts here, Trey King. And today we are very excited to have our guests, Michael and Stephanie from Tensor 9. And today we will dive into their story a bit, what it is that their company does, as well as some engaging insights into the technology industry. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one. So please make sure that you stick around as well. But without further ado, Michael, Stephanie, welcome to the Grow IT podcast.
Thanks for having us, Treg. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Michael. I'm the CEO of Tensor 9. I'll tell you a bit about my background, and then we can talk a bit about the company after introduction. So I'm an engineer. I studied computer science. I worked at Amazon for a long time. I was there for 13 years. I was fortunate enough to land in AWS. I worked in AWS in 2007, 2013. This was the early days. So when I joined, AWS was pretty small. We fit on a couple floors in one building in Seattle. The team I was on, the team I was on is S3, which is a storage service. It's a successful product. And we had maybe a dozen engineers. These days, it's hundreds, probably 400 or 500. So I got to work there on some distributed systems. I worked on all different parts of S3, including one of the more fun things that I worked on was a product that allowed customers to ship us a physical disk in the mail. It was sometimes, it was sometimes easier, faster to ship in the mail than it was to use the network. So I worked on that. I worked on the front end, the back end, and then I spent 6 years working in retail, Amazon retail, working at the intersection of advertising and privacy. And many of the challenges, I'll talk about that later, but many of the challenges that I encountered there led to the inception of this company.
Excellent. Stephanie, if you don't mind just to quickly introduce yourself and a short, just a quick snippet of your story as well, please.
We're very excited to be here, and Michael is super humble. He is one of the original engineers that brought the world S3 and started the entire wave of AWS services.
Excellent. I'm glad you're on here as well. You know, we can find out the truth here.
Yes.
That's excellent.
So I'm the Chief Product Officer for Tensor 9, so I help us find product market fit and accelerate customer growth. And so I'm the ex-CISO of Goldman Sachs Consumer and Wealth Management Division. So we're the folks that brought you the Apple Card and Marcus by Goldman Sachs. I'm also the ex-deputy CISO of Capital One. So we're one of the folks that bring you one of the largest consumer banking operations in the world in an all-cloud environment. I'll say that when I met Michael, I knew we needed to build this business together, and you'll hear more about it, but we are changing the way enterprises use SaaS. And entrepreneurship is in my blood, and I'm very excited about our founding team here. But we'll get into that shortly.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to this. Tell me, guys, so you know how, or let me rather ask, you know, based on your expertise, I mean, Stephanie, if now mentioned as well, you know, both your backgrounds are quite colorful in the sense of what you guys have achieved up until now. But I would like to hear your take on current markets at the moment, in the sense of what would you say, you know, that you've picked up regarding trends in the current, let's call it IT space. You know, what ways are the wind blowing? What have you guys like been noticing?
Oh, you can take this one, Stephanie.
Sure. So I think the biggest trend we're seeing is we've been thinking about on-premise wrong. On-premise is back, but it's not coming back the way it used to be. So just think in the last 20 years, maybe even more in the last 15, it's been all about SaaS. And that's a great thing. And enterprises have been just flooding, moving towards that. But now we're seeing a lot of other dynamics come into play. People are now thinking about privacy. They're thinking about, what am I giving my data to? We're also generating data at a faster rate than we ever have before either. So now that data footprint that a company is generating is even bigger than it was before. If you think about JP Morgan Chase, they've got 400 plus petabytes of data. But ChatGPT's GPT-4 was just trained on 1 petabyte of data. So you just think about how much of that is there, and moving that data is just heavy. That use case of heavy data is another one that we're seeing from a trend. Do you just ship that out? That's just not technologically efficient. And so you'll see like what sparked the company based on these trends. We're seeing a third trend around, I think, operational resilience. Every company is seeing third-party companies having ransomware attacks. So we're talking about disruption. We're talking about destruction as well. And so what do you do when you're a company where you've gone heavy into SaaS, which is great because it simplifies your IT infrastructure, what you need to worry about. You get to unlock value so much more quickly with SaaS. But now you're thinking about, what have I locked all of my business processes that I run my business in towards? You can do vendor due diligence endlessly. You can think about all these different things. And fundamentally, it's a security architecture decision. Do I want to embed myself with all of these SaaS companies, or do I think I can insulate myself by bringing the capabilities that the SaaS offers more into my control? So that's another trend we're seeing as well. There's
Wow,
even
that's
others just with AI. You're seeing
yeah.
things like low latency. All these AI companies want to process this data for you.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you need the data, which again, we just talked about heavy data, and
Yep.
we talked about latency. So how do you get into a world where, if I want to convert something from text to speech, I need a low latency, because if I'm doing speech, you will immediately notice when it's delayed. I will sound like hiccup-y. And so thinking about bringing that logic closer to where the data is the bedrock of what Michael initially set out to do. So Michael, I think it's a good time for you to talk about what you saw.
Yeah. So, look, here are some recent sort of events in the industry that I think are germane to what we're building. One is all the privacy regulations popping up, GDPR being obvious, the one that we've all dealt with. Increasingly, there are local governments in the US and abroad adding their own privacy regulations. And the thing that is very clear, I worked on that stuff on Amazon. I think that became very clear was that it is a mess. The data is everywhere, and it is almost impossible to corral it back. So I think people are realizing that. I think they're realizing that the moment you send data out there, it's out there, and it's difficult to track. And so they're looking for ways to not do that. And one obvious thing to do is to, instead of sending data out into the world to process it, instead have the logic that is processing the data come to you. And it seems obvious, but the last 30 years of internet software is predicated on this idea that we should send the data out to a server, the server is going to process it. So I think that's starting to reverse.
That's
Another
interesting.
another thing that's in this space is this shift from on-prem to cloud. So that has happened in the last couple decades. It's still happening. There's still plenty of on-prem workloads, but that shift has happened, and there are lots of terms for it. Lifted shift is one that comes to mind. And what you have is these two very different models. You have the old school on-prem, you have the newer school cloud, and they both have their advantages. There are trade-offs between these things. And what we're starting to see is that we want to eliminate the idea that we have to trade off between on-prem and SaaS. We want to harmonize these things.
Yeah.
So the benefits of on-prem are operational control, data security, data sovereignty. Saudi Arabia, EU are big on these topics. The benefits of cloud are For the vendor, continuous deployment. I can make changes as a vendor 10 times a day. I can observe my software. I can
Yeah.
see, are there errors? I can fix them quickly. And so folks are looking for a way to have the best of both worlds. And that's what our company, one of the things that our company is pushing forward.
Excellent. Thank you for that contribution. That's quite profound. The guys, I think it might be a good time now to elaborate a bit more. If you guys can tell us, what is it specifically? Who is Tensor9? What is it that you guys do?
Yeah. So we are Tensor9. We're a young company. We launched earlier this year, and we like to call ourselves an enterprise any-prem platform. This is a new term. This is a new category. So let me
Just
explain
wanted
what
to
that
say
means.
I don't. Yeah, because I don't know that term.
Yeah. So let me explain with a motivating example. These days a lot of meetings are online. And it is not uncommon, no doubt, Treg, you've been in a few of these meetings where there is an AI assistant listening in, it's recording, it's taking notes, it's providing summaries.
Daily.
And so those are great products. However, a product like that, if I'm Otter AI and I'm selling this product, it would be very difficult to sell to a bank, for example, because the bank is going to be reluctant to share all their internal meeting data with this third-party company. It's possible to do it, but it's a big hill to climb. And the reason is they have to send the data to the third-party company. So what we do is we help companies like Otter AI to unlock those customers, those banks, those big businesses and enterprises in regulated industries. And the way we do it is we enable that software vendor to say to the bank, listen, you don't have to send your data to us. We'll send our code to you. We will invert the process. Your data stays with you in your cloud. We never see it. We can't see it even if we tried. We send our code to you. And the way we do this, we do it in such a way that for the vendor, it's really easy. It's almost as if they're using cloud. They just deploy locally, and we work behind the scenes to make it show up inside of the bank. And they can also observe their software as if it's local. And so the logs and metrics will come back to them, and it'll feel native to them. There are more details there, but that's the general idea. So we're helping to harmonize this on-prem world with SaaS.
Tell me, Stephanie, I don't know if you maybe want to jump in on this. Yeah, please.
It connects directly with the use cases and the trends that I was describing earlier. So when you invert that model, you keep the data, you enable that privacy. That company, that data never leaves their house. They get that control. They know what can leave. You also get to not spread your data everywhere. You'll hear terms in security just around the concept of attack surface. When you start creating copies of that data everywhere, you're spreading that attack surface for where you're increasing your risk and you're increasing your vulnerability. And with transparency, when you keep that all inside of your house, but you still have the benefits of what SaaS brings, because what you heard from Michael is the code is coming to you, but it's not the old way of on-premise where someone shipped you a CD or you downloaded some executable. This is essentially a continuous SaaS model inside of your public cloud owned by that enterprise, or inside a private cloud still owned by that enterprise. It's still cloud. Or even more extreme circumstances, maybe that enterprise has a data center, and we're even able to bring that SaaS company's capabilities into that data center. So think about it from a SaaS perspective. They commit that code once, it goes to their traditional SaaS. And for those that connected with us, it goes to the customer's instance of their bring your own cloud SaaS to their air-gapped, potentially SaaS inside of their data centers. So many different versions of this, where it's one change going into many form factors and customer environments. So it's still continuously up to date, just as if it was SaaS, but the difference is the data stays with you. So it goes with that trend of privacy, control, transparency. And if you see the fact that you're now decentralized from that SaaS organization's runtime, where their SaaS just has so many different tenants, many customers. Think about Otter AI as an example. They have so many users on their platform right now. And so if they have a blip, and I'm sure they've built to be resilient with it, but if there's an issue there, all of the customers that are running live off of that platform would have a disruption. However, in the event of a decentralized model, where you've gone into the any-prem kind of world, you as a customer, you're insulated because your runtime is in your world. And so your blast radius is a lot smaller. And so your supply chain is also more simple at the same time.
Tell me, if you guys maybe would just dive a bit deeper into, like the different models of software delivery that you guys provide. I don't maybe know if it's maybe you, Stephanie, that can elaborate on that, or Mike, maybe your side.
Yeah, I can talk about that. So what we do, and this is why it's called AnyPrem, is we will allow the vendor to deploy to wherever the customer needs it, right?
Yeah.
And there are lots of different variants there. So, a vendor may need to deploy to a customer that's in Azure or Google Cloud or AWS, or they're using GovCloud, right? Or they're using one of the public clouds, sovereign clouds. These are emerging now, where a customer is big enough to demand their own instance of AWS from AWS. Or they're deploying, the customer has their own physical data center, or another cloud provider that's not as popular. And up until today, if a vendor wants to deploy into those environments, they have to do a lot of work. They have to consider all the different environments. And they either need to build specifically for each of those. And I just rattled off 6 or 7 of them. There are sub-variants of those, but they need to build specifically for those, or they need to do a thing like containerize their software and deploy it as Docker containers or Kubernetes. If they do that, though, they lose the ability to use managed services. They lose the ability to use the cloud. And that's a lot of value there. All the work, all the people working at AWS, making their services run smoothly, that goes away if you containerize your software fully. And so what we do is we allow the vendor to define their software once, and we will transform their application to be able to be deployed in each of those environments. And so there are lots of terms. Yeah, there are lots of terms here. This is a new space. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. No, I just wanted to tell you it's a lot of different ones, right? So it's a lot more than what I would have thought of. And you've mentioned terms here that's that's very new, but I don't think I'll be the only one.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good time to just go through the terms, actually, Michael.
Yeah, well, so there are a number of different terms that are sort of emerging in this space. I'll go through some of them. So one is we all know on-prem. This is a traditional data centers. This tends to be isolated. There's a new term that's emerging: bring your own cloud, or BYOC. That's starting to catch on, and that's the idea that the customer has AWS and is willing to allow the vendor to deploy into their AWS account. Then there are these other terms that are sort of emerging. They haven't quite caught on. There's private SaaS, which is really about it's the same thing as bring your own cloud. There are terms like multi-prem, so being able to deploy to bring your own cloud or on-prem. I've heard the term cloud-prem. What else is there? There are terms like multi-cloud and hybrid cloud that sort of are in the same space. And so it's a little confusing. And and these terms are overloaded. If you say on-prem, it inspires certain thoughts in people's minds. So what we're wanting to coin now is this term of any-prem, to simplify into this unifying abstraction. Hey, vendor, you build it once, we will deploy it anywhere you need. And so you don't have to think too hard about the distinction between the different environments your customers need your software to run it. And not only is it their software and infrastructural environment, but it's also their security requirements. Do they have data sovereignty laws that that kind of, and compliance? Do they have HIPAA that they need to worry about? Is there FedRAMP? All of these things are variants of the customer's environment that today vendors need to think about. We seek to build an abstraction so they have to think about that far less.
This is so interesting to me. Very, very, very much interesting. The guys, I want to get your thoughts on a bit coming to leadership. If we can maybe step away and maybe look a bit more holistically at this. You know, in your opinion, what type of mindset would you guys say is needed to be a successful founder of a company? Because you know, both of you come of very colorful backgrounds, experts in what you do, came together. Like you guys mentioned, you started out earlier this year. And so I'm sure those thoughts must have run through your heads very freshly up until now, right? And we'd just like to get your take on what that mindset, what are we looking at? What are we looking at here from a founder of a company point of view?
Stephanie, you want to take that one first?
I would say everyone on the founding team sells. You need to be comfortable getting in front of, seeking out, and talking with customers. And as you can imagine, as an early stage company, the biggest thing is around defining who we are, defining our product, building that product, but also growth and engaging the community. And I think with that, it all comes down to grit. So having that endurance, that perseverance to know what your vision is and know how to go around the obstacles in your way. So with that, it's being flexible and adaptable to achieve that. Michael?
Excellent. Mike, something from
Yeah.
your side?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all those things. I say you have to, I mean, I cannot overstate that you have to love doing difficult things. Because you know, it's like chomping on nails. It is extremely difficult to start a company, let alone start one that is selling enterprise software, let alone to regulated industries. It is incredibly hard. And so, you know, I personally have always enjoyed difficult things. I feel most alive when I'm doing something difficult. If it's not difficult, I think I'm wasting my time. And so that is a personality trait that, you know, nicely aligns with what I think is necessary to build something out of nothing.
Tell me, Michael, where can the listeners, you know, where can the people get hold of you guys?
Yeah, well, you could go to tensor9.com and check out our company page, and you know our LinkedIn's are there. You can Google my name, for example. You can find my personal website. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you're in Seattle, you can go to a Seattle tech meetup, and I'll be there.
Excellent.
Yeah, and
That's good.
Stephanie.
Same thing. You can find me on LinkedIn, and we are right off of the company site. If you think about the spelling of it, it's most clearly demonstrated on Michael's t-shirt.
There it is.
Tensor9.com.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. Guys, thank you for your time today. Is there any maybe last thoughts that's you know, maybe one of the two of you or you know would like to mention? Stephanie, maybe something from your side?
I will say always think about the business and its
Yeah.
customers first. So no matter what part of the company you're in, that everything always goes back to that. And whether you're in cybersecurity and you found a risk, think about how are you going to rationalize it and how are you going to explain it. When you're as an entrepreneur, you need to think about what does the industry need? What do all the different customers need? So think about that first.
That's quite profound. Michael, something from your side? Last thoughts?
I love that. I mean, I worked at Amazon, and one of the kind of important principle that Amazon is working backwards from the customer. It was drilled into our heads all the time. And it's one of the things that I like, you know, I understood it then, but I didn't appreciate it really until I was out on my own and having to build a product. And so this idea of obsessively thinking about the customer's perspective and working backwards, not forwards from your desires or your technology or your vision for the product is critical. So I think Stephanie's idea is the right one. I agree with that.
Well, thank you guys for coming on today. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure the listeners as well. All the best to you guys, for you know, to Tensor9, and we hope to see you guys in the media sometime. You know, as well, growing and stronger. Thank you very much for joining today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Treg. Thanks.
Take care, guys. Bye now.